So now we're going to be adding and subtracting our fractions. When we add and subtract, something we need to remember is we need a common denominator. So our first step, our first question is, do we have a common denominator? And for these first four, we will have common denominators. Let's look at number one. I have a common denominator, so I don't need to change anything. I can just go straight to adding. And when I add straight across. So I have a minus 6b plus a plus 5b. All over, my denominator is AA. So we add the top, keep the denominator the same. Now I'm going to combine like terms. A, that gives me 2A, negative 6B, 5B, minus B over 8A. Last step, let's check. Can we factor the top at all? No, we cannot. That is our answer. Let's go ahead and try number 2. Remember our first question, do we have a common denominator? Yes, we do. Let's go straight to adding. I have 4 plus 4 over a squared plus 2 minus 3. Now let's combine the top. 4 and a is 5 minus 4 plus 4, that's 0. Just to check to see if we can cross anything out, we're going to factor the bottom. I want to get to negative 3, so 3 times 1. I want a positive 2, so I'm going to have a positive 3 and a negative 1. Positive 3a, negative a. I don't have anything in common with the top and bottom, so that is my final answer. I want you now to try 3 on your own. Just the combining everything part. For 3, we do have a common denominator, so we can go straight to here. We're subtracting. And when we're subtracting, we have to remember to distribute the negative. So on the top, I'm going to have 2x minus x minus 5y. The denominator stays the same. We're going to distribute the negative. So I get 2x minus x plus 5y minus x minus minus is a plus 5y. And the denominator stays the same. Now I can combine my like terms. I get an x plus 5y over 12x to the 5th y. I can't factor anything on the top. Nothing crosses out. So that is my final answer. Let's look at example 4. Example 4, I notice we don't have a common denominator, but they're the opposite. So in order to fix this, I can take out a -1 from the second one. So we're going to take that. Now I have -4. So now instead of a plus, we have a minus. So our problem is 2x squared, and we're no longer plus. Now we're minus. Remember, when I'm subtracting, this goes in parentheses. And then my common denominator was x squared minus 4. So a few notes on that. Since they're opposite, we change to a subtraction problem. We notice they're opposites, factored out the negative, so this plus became a minus. Now we can do what we did on the other one. We're going to distribute the negative. I get 2x squared minus x minus 10 over x squared minus 4. I notice that I have two polynomials on the top and the bottom. Our last question is, can we factor? And the answer is yes. So factor the top, factor the bottom. When I have a number not 1 in front, we're going to see 2. So that's going to be a 2x and an x. 2x times x is 2x squared. Let's try 2 and 5 for 10 first. If I put a 2 here, that has a GCF of 2, so I'm going to put a 5 here and a 2 here. I have 5x, 4x. I want a negative, so the bigger is going to be negative. So I'm going to have a negative 5x plus 4x gives me negative x. The bottom is a difference of squares, so I have an x plus 2, x minus 2. And things do cross out. So I have 2x minus 5 over x minus 2. So again, we changed this to subtraction because these were opposites. We did our subtraction. We noticed that we could factor. Then we simplified. And then we have our final answer. Now we are going to look at fractions that have unlike denominators. So the first thing I want us to do is look at what are our denominators. Well, I have a denominator of 5y, and I have a denominator of 5. In order to add fractions, we need the same denominator. So what one am I going to need to change? Well, I'm going to need to multiply this one by a y. So I'm going to multiply by y over y. So this fraction, I have to multiply by y over y. Doing that will give me a denominator of 5y, which is the same as this one. So on top, I have 3x over 5y plus 5y times y is 5y squared over 5y. Now I have the same denominator, so we can do what we did at the top. Add across the top, and then keep our denominator the same. I notice that I don't have anything I can factor on the top, so I am finished. Let's look at example 6. Let's note, what are our denominators? My denominator is 4 and then 4n squared. So I'm going to have to multiply this left one by something. What do I have to multiply by? Well, I'm missing an n squared, so I'm going to multiply by n squared over n squared. Okay, what fraction am I doing that to? This one, so multiply by n squared over n squared. What do I get? I get 2mn squared over 4n squared plus, I didn't have to change this one, now I have a common denominator, so I can add straight across. 2mn squared plus 6n over 4n squared. Our next question should be, can I factor something out of the numerator? I have let's see, 2 and 6, I have a GCF of 2. And it looks like I can also take an n out. So I'm going to factor out a 2n. And I'm left with mn, because 2n times mn is 2mn squared. And then 6n divided by 2n is 3. And this is going to be over 4n squared. Now I do this because now I can reduce. Two and 4 reduces to 2. And then this n cross out, and one of these n's cross out. So I'm left with the answer, mn plus 3. Oh, I didn't write the n. Over 2n. So again, we found our common denominator, 4n squared, multiplied top and bottom by n squared, added, factored out a GCF, and reduced. Let's go ahead and try example 7. All right, what are our denominators? I have 2x and 4x squared. To make those the same, I need to multiply that one by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And I need to multiply by another x. X times x is x squared. So that's what I need to multiply by. So I'm going to multiply my fraction by 2x over 2x. 2x times 5 is 10x. 4x squared, just like we want, minus 1 over 4x squared. We're going to do our subtraction, 10x minus 1 over 4x squared. Can I factor the top? No, so this is our answer. Let's go ahead and do example 8. Let's see, our denominators are 3x minus 1 and x minus 2. So they're both completely different. So this one, I'm going to have to multiply by 3x minus 1 and this one I'm going to have to multiply by x minus 2. So this side, x minus 2. This side, 3x minus 1. So I have x times x minus 2 over my denominator minus 4 times 3x minus 1 over my denominator So here, for this numerator, we're going to distribute. I get x squared minus 2x. Here I have a negative 4, so we're going to distribute that. Negative 4 times 3x, negative 12x. Negative 4 times negative 1, positive 4. And what's our common denominator? X minus 2 times 3x minus 1. We can combine the top. Negative 2x, negative 12x, negative 14x plus 4, and then our common denominator. Let's just quickly check. Can we factor the top? No. So this is our final answer. Sometimes before we can go straight to finding our common denominator, we need to factor our denominators to see what they are. So let's go ahead and factor this denominator and then factor the other one. Let's see, x times x multiplies times 1, 1 and 1. So they're both going to be minuses because minus x, it's minus 2x. X and x minus 6. If I do 3 and 2, like a negative 6, so it'd be negative 3, positive 2. That won't work. So let's try a 6 and a 1. If I make this positive, 6x minus x gives me positive 5x. So here, I have x plus 6, x minus 1. Here, I have x minus 1, x minus 1. To make them the same, what do I need here? Well, I'm going to need an x plus 6. Here, what am I going to need to make them the same? I have an x plus 6. I have one x minus 1, so I need another x minus 1. Okay, so for this left fraction, I'm multiplying by x plus 6 over x plus 6. This fraction, I'm multiplying by x minus 1 over x minus 1. All right. So we're going to have 3 times x plus 6. And what's our denominator? Our denominator is x plus 6, x minus 1, x minus 1, plus 1 times x minus 1 over what's our denominator? X plus 6, x minus 1, x minus 1. So now we can combine. We're going to distribute, so I get 3x plus 18. I distribute plus x minus 1 over Our denominator is x plus 6, x minus 1, x minus 1. Let's combine like terms. 3x plus x is 4x. 18 minus 1 is 17. And then our denominator, can we factor the top? No. So here's our final answer. Go ahead and try example 10. Pause the video so they can try example 10. Okay, for example 10, we need to factor our denominators. X plus 3, x minus 3. The difference of squares. And then this one is x 6. We could do, let's try 3 and 2. To get a negative 6, I need one negative, one positive. Negative 3x, positive 2x, that gives me a negative x. All right, let's look at our denominators. This fraction, that's my denominator. My other fraction, that's my denominator. So my first fraction, I have an x plus 3, I have an x minus 3, but I don't have an x plus 2. So I'm going to have an x plus 2. So that's what I'm going to have to multiply by. For my second fraction, I have an x minus 3, have an x plus 2, but I don't have an x plus 3. So we're going to multiply by x plus 3. So the first fraction, we're multiplying by x plus 2. The second fraction, I know I keep moving this a lot, sorry, x plus 3. Okay. So again, we're just looking for what's missing. This one doesn't have an x plus 2. This one doesn't have an x plus 3. So here I'm going to have 2 times x plus 2 minus 4 times x plus 3. In this denominator, x plus 2, x plus 3, x minus 3. This denominator, x minus 3, x plus 2, x plus 3. Notice now my denominators are the same. I have an x plus 3, x plus 2, and x minus 3. Okay, so we distribute. 2x plus 4. Distribute. Negative 4x minus 12. And these can be written in any order. It doesn't matter. Oh, minus 4x. There we go. Let's combine like terms. 2x minus 4x, negative 2x. 4 minus 12, negative 8. So I combine like terms, rewrote the denominator, and that is our final answer. I can factor negative 2 from the top, but it won't match the bottom, so it doesn't really matter. So again, find your factors, multiply by what's missing, distribute, and then combine like terms.